Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here
Yes.
with you. Welcome to another episode of What's at Stake on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Happy to join you once a month here. As you all know, my standard stock and trade is in the political realm. And so we're very fortunate to have with us a brother. He and I have done a lot of work together over the years, a lot of cross broadcasting and simulcasting. He's an author and a blogger, hosts his own show. He'll tell us about that. He's a political activist himself. So first, let's get an update on everything that our dear brother Egberto Willies is up to. My brother, how are you?
Man, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you as usual, Rev. Last time I saw you, I think it was in either Chicago or Philadelphia at the Netroots Nation. And as usual, we had our great conversations and great interview where you laid out the land. I think you actually called the election as we spoke a few months ago, unfortunately, but you did.
Well, actually, I think we were at Netroots this last summer in Baltimore.
Actually, you're right. It is
In
in
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Yes,
Right.
yes,
And we kind of were ahead of the curve
yes.
on Kamala possibly being the nominee, as well as one of my predictions didn't come true because, as I said very prominently, I felt there should have been two women on the ticket.
Yes, I remember that.
But like I said, if we're gonna go out in flames. But brother, it's good to see you. First of all, tell everybody about what you're up to these days and where they can find you and keep up with you. Let's get that at the outset.
Well, thank you so kindly. As you guys, I am actually the host of Politics Done Right on KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston, and we also simulcast over at Substack under Egberto Off the Record and throughout YouTube and these other networks. So you can find me easily by simply going to politicsdoneright.com. Politicsdoneright.com is where you can find what I do. I'm a political activist and also an unabashed progressive host. So what we do is try to let people know the current state of the nation and what we as progressives need to do to reclaim what is justifiably ours.
Yeah, but that's very important. So man, so much going on in the news. Now, help us to understand what is going on with these refugees from apartheid South Africa. I know you've been covering that.
Yes, I am. I think in general, progressives should make this a meme, a necessary meme, because what we have is that first of all, the president of South Africa made it clear that there is no genocide going on in South Africa. There is no attack on white people going on in South Africa. In fact, what's going on in South Africa is the attempt at getting some sort of equity. 7% of rather 70% of the land in South Africa is controlled by the white minority when there is a 93% Black majority in the country. We understand that the Afrikaners came from Holland and other places to dominate the country, where they took things over. They threw Black folks in the Bantustan. So that if there were anyone that could call themselves refugees at any time, would have been the actual residents of South Africa. Now, what occurred is that because there is a law that was passed that said lands that are deemed not used and lands that are deemed necessary for, like we would use eminent domain here in the United States, would be reclaimed. And in very few instances would the owners of that land not be compensated. Well, many have used that as an excuse to say there is an attack on the white farmer, which is completely false. Donald Trump, receiving his information from Elon Musk, who is a South African himself, believed on what they were saying and opened, even as he has closed America accepting refugees from any other country, specifically any other country of color. He has made exceptions for the Afrikaners, which are the white African descendants of the Dutch and others. Now, interestingly, not only is he allowing them to come here, let's remember, I did an image between how the Haitians were treated and how the South Africans were treated. The South Africans got a chartered jet that flew to South Africa to pick them up, bring them to Dallas, right there in your part of the country, give them a ceremony, put them up, pay them, help them find jobs, help them find provide them with diapers and all the necessary things as any humane country would do. So the reality is, I am not fighting or concerned about United States doing a good thing for people who deem themselves refugees. But if they can get that kind of treatment when we know for a fact that they are in fact not refugees, why do we treat the people south of the border the way that we do? Why do we have men on horses whipping the Asians like slaves? Why do we treat and discard these people like they are not human beings? Why do the Governor Abbott of Texas put razor sharp wire along the Rio Grande to go ahead and harm these people? It is clear. And for everybody who supports Donald Trump, and specifically for people of color who support Donald Trump, a man who has proven that he thinks there are different degradations of humanity, how can you support something like that?
Right. No, that's a very relevant question. You mentioned Elon Musk too. Obviously, this is some type of a quid pro quo for Elon Musk's investment in his campaign. Elon Musk and his family being South African. That exposes what's really going on here, and the double standard, the treatment of other immigrants in this country. They're kicking people out. They've snatched up a few people who are legitimately here. They've said they want to come after people who are illegal, but Egberto, they've kicked a few people out of this country who come from south of the border, who are here legitimately. And a few people also, a good friend of mine, Mohsen Mawadi, who is here legally, a Palestinian, was detained for about 2 weeks himself. They finally released him. So they're snatching all these other folks up, and they've not done anything, including ones who are here rightfully and legally, right?
Yeah, a personal story. I am originally from Panama, and I have I'm a naturalized American citizen. I have a passport that shows that I'm a U.S. citizen, and of course, it tells you what's the country of your birth. I have refrained from traveling outside of the country because I've heard too many stories of other people that are naturalized citizens coming into the country and taken aside, thrown into a room, and done massive interrogations on them. Now, as you know, both you and I, we do this type of politics. We do this type of programming. We do this type of hosting. What do you think's going to happen if I travel out of the country and come back? And even as they let me in, don't you think I'll be harassed?
Yeah. You're right. Brother, you better not. You better not do that in your position. How many South African, and I dread even calling them that, but how many Afrikaners, so to speak, refugees are we talking about?
Well, the first plane load was, I think, 57 refugees, but there are 8,000 in South Africa right now that are seeking qualification or have been qualified to come to the United States. So the reality is we don't know the exact number, but we know 8,000 have already applied to the United States. And you can almost be guaranteed that these 8,000 people that are coming here are not people of best repute. Donald Trump always says, we get your criminals, we get, and, put all these. I can almost guarantee you without any research that the people who are going to leave South Africa are the people of less repute, if you will, than the average white South African, because the average white South African is living very well. They're living much better than the average Black South African, even as the country apartheid has gone. They own 70% of the land. They own most of the resources of production. So what the reality is that it is a fraud that we're bringing these people in as refugee. But what's a bigger fraud is the amount of taxpayer dollars used to bring them in, even as Doge is talking about cutting back, even as Doge is talking about the burden the refugees from the south of the border are bringing to America. When we are flying planes to South Africa and as we repatriate these people here, we're providing them with the welfare that the people south of the border are not getting. nor are they asking for.
Where are they going? Where are they going to be living? Do we know? Just wherever they can?
No, well, actually, they'll be placed around the United States, but right now there's a particular church that was supposed to assist with it, and they got so much flack that they decided we better back out of this because this is really an unfair situation. So I am not sure exactly who is going to help them right now, but they have the most important help that they need right now, and that is Donald Trump and Elon Musk using our taxpayer dollars to do whatever it takes to make sure they're comfortable and well taken care of.
Yeah, this is something else. I'm hard pressed to remember when other nations in Africa decolonized, where there was sort of an airlift or former folks this late in the game. I mean, we're 30 years out from democratic elections.
Yes.
Not to mention, we're talking about countries that were colonized by the countries they were colonized by. So, right. If they're going to go somewhere, why not go to England or UK, or some of them they're Dutch.
Right.
Those countries on it. That's interesting that they're not even asking for those. They're not inviting those people to come back. What does the United States have to do with finding housing and a place for people like that?
This is a DEI. This is a DEI play. It's important to. I think you brought up that excellent point, right? Why aren't they going back to Germany? Why aren't they going back to Great Britain? Why aren't they going back to Holland, right? To the Netherlands? Why? Because they are. This has nothing to do with refugee status. This is a DEI play that we are making here. We are attempting to make America wider. That's why Donald Trump brought up the birth issue, because he believed most of the people that would take advantage of the birth issue would be the particular people of the right hue. That is why he got rid of the Library of Congress person, because they want to make sure that America is focused on this DEI thing. They want to make it seem like the people of color are harming white people. That is what they have to get into the psyche of Americans to be able to do the things that they want to do. Absent that, guess what's going to happen? Does Bacon Rebellion ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is you have to make sure and keep that friction in society. That's why DEI is strong. I've heard people talk about DEI that were once NAACP members.
Yeah. That's right. That's very significant. Caller, you're on the air with Egberto Willies on What's at Stake.
This is Rick calling you long distance from Germany, Mark. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, hey, Rick, how you doing, man? I'm good. We can hear you. Yes, sir.
Still alive after 20 years of CIA intestinal parasites. I remember in 1984, there was a book released by an anthropologist, Vincent Crapanzano, and the title of that book was Waiting, the Whites of South Africa. And shortly after the release of that book, during the Reagan-Bush years, South Africans were brought into America and resettled not only in Texas, but in parts of Arizona. And they knew that the writing was on the wall, that if blacks took over South Africa, what the wicked ones did to the blacks there would be repaid sooner or later. So they got out of Dodge. And I knew it was only a matter of time before a crazy Republican came to power that more South Africans would find their way into America. I'm done, fellas.
So you sharing with us some history I was not aware of. So some of them have been brought here in the past during the Reagan-Bush period. Did you know that, Egberto?
Yeah, it was during the time when Reagan was instituting this policy called constructive engagement. While Pan-Africa and all these other guys were trying to get rid of South Africa, get rid of apartheid at all costs, we were in a period where Reagan wanted to stay engaged with the white South African government of both I believe it was, and others, and they call it that engagement. And yes, a lot of South Africans move over then. But I want to point out something. The South African Constitution is a much better constitution than ours in that it is a humane document and not a capital document. And as a humane document, those white people in South Africa they've suffered no penalties for the ills they imposed on Black people. In other words, in fact, they had their reconciliation councils, etc., where they got together and forgave well, not forgave each other. The Black folks forgave what the Afrikaners did to them, etc. So it's important for us to understand that this fallacy that Donald Trump tries to put out there, that the Black folks now are attempting to harm these benevolent Afrikaners, the people who once had them on Bantustans and all these different on all the Badlands. That never happened. Nelson Mandela ought to be and Sikh I can't remember his name, have to be given great credit for having the dignity and the humanity not to turn the other, not to pull an eye for an eye, but to actually say, you know what? We're not going to keep the violence going. We are going to do the right thing. The thing that you guys didn't do, we'll do. And that is think humanity first.
So speaking of constructive engagement, that was taking place at the time I was an 18-year-old student at Georgetown. And that's where I began my journalism career in Washington, writing for the Georgetown student newspaper, The Hoya, and writing stories every day against constructive engagement. And we ultimately closed university to get it down, protested and shut down university to get it to divest from South Africa. But it was that Reagan administration that maintained that policy. And, I was in the School of Foreign Service, Egberto, at Georgetown. And whenever Reagan officials would come and speak, particularly, you remember his name, the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs in the Reagan administration was Chester Crocker.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't remember the name. Yeah,
that's Crocker. So he came to speak. Whenever he would show up, and the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown has a very close relationship with the diplomatic corps and the foreign service environment community. And we would sing, Hugh Massacre, bring back Nelson Mandela. We would sing that and drown out his speech and then go to jail and then sing it in jail. But no, you're absolutely right in terms of that history and what that meant. So, folks, this is something that we ought to be concerned about as the double standard happens to our other family from the global South in particular. Any other comments? 202-588-0893 for comments on this topic. Want to shift, though, because I see you've also been covering. See, so many things aren't getting coverage. Folks want to talk about the plane. That's what the dude you say on the show. And Trump's plane, which obviously, Egberto, raises questions about emoluments. Let's just touch on that briefly. Is this not evidence that there are literally, as Kamala Harris said, there would be no guardrails? Even the Constitution is being rendered obsolete. No other president has done that. You can't just go get a new plane from a whole nother country as a gift and start flying it all over the place as president, right? You're not supposed to be able to do. That's the emoluments clause.
And the plane is already there, and I think it's right here in San Antonio, and it's here. And you're right. It is nobody's enforcing the Constitution at this point in time. Donald Trump should have already been impeached for, again, violating the Constitution.
We've got another caller on the line for Egberto Willies. Caller, go right ahead.
Hello.
Yes, hello. You're on the air.
Am I the one?
Yes, you are.
Am I the one? Okay. It's refreshing to have these young people, Africans from the Western Hemisphere. I wonder if they could help us come up with somebody like Middleton that is linking us here in the Western Hemisphere with African scholars around the world to highlight our contribution to world civilization. Secondly, it's also refreshing too that young people like Ibrahim Traore is electrifying Africans on the continent. If we can get some intelligent leaders like the two of you to link up with those ones on the African continent so that we can actually come together and really bring true civilization and true freedom to humanity globally.
Yes, sir. Yeah, well, I agree. I think that's what our brother Egberto and I have been doing and will continue to do. And I was a student of Listerville Middleton's from a distance. And, Listerville did a lot to bring the great scholars like Sheikh Anta Diop and John Henry Clark and Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin and Shashi McIntyre to the airwaves. And many of us continued in that vein. So I appreciate you, caller. That's what we've got to continue to do. And we want to lift up our contributions to the diaspora. I want to come back to that, but first, I want to just go to one other story as we look at so many things that are being covered and are not being covered. Egberto, you are covering and are emphatic in your coverage that the Trump administration plans to take away our health insurance, our Medicaid. No one else is talking about that or covering that. Talk to us about that, if you would.
Yeah, and that is what the smoke and mirrors are all about with Donald Trump. The plane is a smoke and mirrors. The drug deal that he claimed to have that really isn't a drug deal at all. It's all to get people away from the real subject at hand, and that is to since they couldn't get the Affordable Care Act dismembered because of McCain back during the first Trump administration, they're doing it in a backdoor fashion because they know Americans want to have at least the Affordable Care Act. And note what I said, at least the Affordable Care Act. What we really need is a Medicare for all system. But right now, nobody wants to put that in the forefront. Yesterday, Tuesday, the Ways and Means Committee and other committees at the same time were discussing all these cuts that were going to be made to Medicaid. But they didn't want anybody following it on C-SPAN or whatever. So what we had the airplane story, and we had the little drug story, and we had all these other stories. And if you watch TV yesterday, whether it's be CNN, MSNBC, or any of the others, the only story you saw was that sexy story about that Qatari plane sitting on the tarmac, and why we had Democratic Congress people talking about the emoluments clause and talking about which they should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But while they're talking about that is taking up airtime. There's a finite amount of time in that people have that people are watching TV. That time should be used to tell folks your Medicare, your father's Medicare, your aunt's who is in the nursing homes, Medicaid, your family who lives in rural area, those hospitals will be closing. You cannot allow this to occur. You cannot give a free pass to your congressperson, whether Republican or Democrat, to allow this to happen. When that law is passed, it's just that, passed. And at that point, there's little you can do until God knows when to go ahead and recover what you would have lost. The emoluments clause can be handled anytime. We can handle that after the budget has been passed. But we can't. But if we worry about something right now and not what's occurring with your healthcare, it is too late. Look, I want to interject with this. I'm glad that you said not a lot of people are covering this, Reverend, because here's the deal. The reason we can cover this is because those folks who are listening to you right now, they are the ones who support this station.
We have them. Egberto Willies, so glad to have him here and all the information he's giving us. In the moments remaining, Egberto, we are diasporic people, you from Panama as well. It's like, and I was saying to someone last night, it's almost as if Ben Chavis and I were talking last night, the president of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and the way everyone is talking about the Pope being a member of the diasporic family. It's almost as if, one of you would agree, it's almost as if with all of the bad and alarming news, it's almost like an escape, something good to talk about, something else to be interested in besides Trump on a 24-hour news cycle. That we have a Pope, it would appear that everyone can claim. Now, I'm just learning at this moment about Creole culture. I didn't know, I've heard of it. Mm-hmm. But it's really been interesting learning about some of this. And what are your thoughts about this and how this is unfolding and people's fascination with it?
People want America to be what America says it is so badly. They want America. Look, remember, I'm from Panama.
Yes.
America was on a pedestal. I mean, we Panamanians, we knew about slavery. We knew about the genocide against the Indians, the indigenous. We knew about how the Chinese were treated. We knew about how the Irish were treated. We knew all those things. But what we also knew is that America was a government, a system that allowed itself to atone and had been atoning over the years. There's a lot left to atone, but it's been there. So we put America on that pedestal because there are a lot of countries who their bad stays bad. Their bad never gets better. We get better as a society because the salsa that we are, I don't call it a melting pot. Because we can all keep our cultures and enjoy other people's culture. That's a salsa. We don't have to melt into one thing. I love going for Italian food. I love going to some good soul food and having me the chitlins and all that good stuff. I love it. I love it all, right? I love going to get some French. I love it all. I don't want it all changed. And the rest of the world, Donald Trump is a shock. Donald Trump is all what America is not supposed to be.
Right.
I do believe that electing this Pope, who is a naturalized Peruvian citizen of Creole descent, whose mother was identified as Black, whose grandmother was identified as Black. I think that, and again, has that native in him as well. I think and I don't know whether he accepts that or not. We don't know how he grew up or anything like that, but we know that is his lineage, and you can't run from what your DNA says, right? You can't run from that. And I think the rest of the world said, and these cardinals probably said, you know what? We have to redeem America. You know, America is still one of the most important nations in the world. Why not put a pope in there that let them live up to who they claim that they are? And you know what? I don't think they could have found a better one. I mean, at least they didn't choose Dolan. You know, at least they did choose the bishop from New York. They chose Leo the 14th. They chose right, and in so doing, I think they have redeemed, or rather, they have put us in a place as Americans where we can say, well, we can't be proud of this president, but my God, we've got the Pope.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Now, if and people say, well, is he going to acknowledge it? See, my thing is, he doesn't have to hold a press conference.
He is it.
He is it, right? And I'm gonna tell you something, Egberto. If you don't want it acknowledged, you scrub that stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff hit. Black Catholic Messenger had that 5 minutes after he walked out on the balcony.
Yes.
And then I Googled it. It was nothing.
Yes.
It was all transparent. So to me, that's a statement in and of itself. But now, as I'm interested in the culture, I'm learning more about it. Isn't it true that some Panamanians are a part of, or consider themselves a part of, the Creole family?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, if we go across the Americas, right, you will see the same thing because, again, the entire America was colonized by a different set of Europeans. But remember, these Europeans share something in common. After all, their kings and their queens intermarried, whether it be the German queen, the Dutch queen, all of these folks are one, and they were the colonizers of America and the Caribbean. So, let's see, I got 2 minutes. Let me tell you a 1 minute story when I came to this country. When I came to America, and I went to the University of Texas, where we did march against apartheid as well. I was one of those guys with the boots and the beret on, right? And it was funny because I was seeking, going around, and I found the African American Culture Committee, and I had to go join, right? I was in a lot of different groups, but I wanted to make sure and be in this Black group as well. So I joined the Afro American Culture Committee, and we were talking about Reverend Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And I said, yeah, I like Reverend Martin Luther King, but I have a closer affinity to Malcolm X because I was more, in other words, I'm not going to hurt you, but if you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. Okay. And that's a kind of, I wasn't going to turn the cheek. And they attacked me. And the final blow was when they say, you are not one of us anyway. You're an import. And I had two choices: leave that room and just say, no, I'm not one of you, or acknowledge who I really was. I was one of them. Right. I am one of you. And you're not going to take that away from me. I didn't come to the Americas on a pleasure ship. I came on the same kind of ships you guys came. Mine just landed into a different place than yours. So we are the same. And they got an education that day because I had a pig head when I got to the United States. And I said, no. we are the same. And the other thing that I made sure to do, and I said, and by the way, I thank you, brothers, for being the leaders that have allowed me to come over here. Because again, the leaders of the movement were our folks right here in the United States, and some that migrated, Marcus Garvey and others migrated from the Caribbean. But this is the genesis of the change and the rephrase. I mean, Haiti, we have to put Haiti in a different box, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But no, I mentioned Dr. Clark earlier, and he coined the term the African world. And we are the only reason I'm not Panamanian is where my folk got off the boat.
Right.
So we folks got, I'm not Dominican and you aren't Haitian.
Right.
This all depends on where folks got off. That's very, very important. My brother, I so appreciate you for being here. Again, tell everyone where they can find you every day.
Every day you can find me at politicsdoneright.com. I'm at Substack as well. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter is where you can actually pick up my Substack as well. So look, I appreciate the time that you gave me here to be on with you, Reverend. You know, I really respect you. I respect the work that you do, and I follow the work that you do.
And likewise, my brother, Substack's blowing up. He invited me to do a Substack with him. We're going to do that soon, one of these days, folks, probably in the next week or so. Once again, thank you to Egberto Willies. We love our brothers. Stay tuned.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.